The night before the entrance, the commander took us all and started briefing us about where we're gonna go, what we're gonna do, what the risks are, what's the dangers, what we need to avoid, and the rules of engagements too. The rules were, if we see civilians, if we can see something 200 meters or closer to us, it's not a civilian at all. It's maybe a watcher for Hamas forces or a suicide bomber or just a terrorist. So we had no brief about civilians because it's too close to us, we can shoot and kill it.
On the 17th of July 2014, Israel launched a major ground offensive into the Gaza Strip in a bid to stop rockets being fired by Palestinian militants and to destroy a network of tunnels used by Hamas and other factions. By the time they left, some 2,200 Palestinians would be dead, including a significant number of civilians. Now, for the first time, Israeli soldiers have described the orders they received for fighting in civilian areas, orders that treated any Palestinian as a threat. Among those who have spoken out is a 22-year-old sergeant who served in a tank battalion during the 50-day war.
One morning, the commander took 6 tanks. We stood in a row in front of El Burej, and he told us over the radio, "Good morning, El Burej, 3, 2, 1, fire." And the whole tanks just fired on random buildings and random targets. Most of our shooting was random. We didn't thought about civilian casualties and moral, and some people thought it's like a shooting range, some people thought it's fun, some people didn't thought about it at all. I just thought it's really, really bad to shoot on random targets without knowing the effect on the civilian population.
The high amount of civilian casualties in Operation Protective Edge, the huge amount of destruction we left behind in Gaza, by no way is out of the blue. Yeah, this is a direct result of new doctrines the IDF has developed. You basically cause disproportionate, significant amount of damage to infrastructure, civilian property in the area you fight in order to create deterrence.
Dik had between 12 to 20 houses in my memory. And when I went out, I looked to Dik again and I saw between 1 and 3 houses. And then I asked my commander what happened, why we need to do it, why there is nothing left there. So he told me that the necessity was to destroy the neighborhood.
Did you face any real danger from the houses?
No, while we were entering, there was no shooting, no explosion at us, nothing. We just entered at the night, and in the morning nothing happened. And when I think about it, nothing really happened from Dik to our forces.
The zero-risk doctrine basically argues that there is 4 levels of value of life, where in the top, Israeli civilians, then come Israeli soldiers, then come Palestinian civilians, and then Palestinian militants and terrorists. So we, as an army, have to do everything possible to bring the risk to our troops to 0, even if it will cost in massive damage to the other side, which is exactly the opposite of what international humanitarian law is about, protecting civilians during time of conflict.
I think there is a good chance of civilian casualties in this random shooting because most of the time we shot to places farther than from the combat zones, like 1 kilometer to 3 kilometers farther in the Gaza Strip. And those places never been warned by the IDF about shooting and fighting there. So a lot of people stay in their houses.
The IDF is very proud of the precautionary measures it took in Protective Edge. The leaflets that it disseminated warning the civilians of an attack that is due, telephone calls, etc. And indeed, international law obliges combatants to take precautionary measures prior to attack in order to reduce the damage to civilians. However, it seems from the testimonies that the IDF took a position or a stand that precautionary measures can replace the principle of distinction, when in fact international law is very clear that precautionary measures is an obligation that comes in addition to the obligation to always make a distinction between civilians and combatants and civilian objects and military objects.
After a soldier in my unit died, the commander told us to take our tanks and go to a combat position. Some commanders told it was a revenge shoot in order to revenge his death, and others say it's for his honor. So we took our tanks, we went into a combat position, and each and every gunner chose his building and shot on this building. I just saw a building, it was orange building, it was really high, and I thought, okay, I'm just gonna shoot it. And this was the process of picking up targets, the whole conflict. For our unit, I know. It was, okay, let's shoot this, let's shoot that, let's do it, let's do that.
Basically what happened there is that the IDF took its own ethical code and threw it out of the window. Part of the doctrine basically argues that in an asymmetrical war you cannot really win it. It's not something you fight, you win, and it's over. It will come again and again. So the strategic objective is not to eliminate the enemy, but to buy more time between rounds of conflict. And the way you do it is by not playing according to the rules.
The goal of what the unit does in regards with Palestinians is not just self-defense, it's upholding a military regime